Man, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of EOS. Got another crazy story for y'all. This is gonna be about the most famous person I met inside of Florida State Prison. I had no idea who this person was beforehand. Before any of what I'm about to tell you happened, I had no idea. I viewed them as a regular person, a regular inmate. I had no clue on who this actually was. So let's jump right into it. Once again, we are at Appalachia CI. More specifically, we are in I dorm. I dorm, it was a closed custody dorm, but this dorm was cells. So you had I 1, 2, 3, and 4. There was some other closed custody dorms on the compound, but this one was cells. This was, as locked down as you can get. You know what I'm saying? Aisle one was full of everybody that was off of like death row, that had MIPs, which is a murder in prison, kind of like the last kid that I spoke on from the last video, 23 Facing Death. When you catch a body in prison, you're given an MIP status, which is a murder in prison status, and you can only be put in a cell with someone else that also has an MIP. You're labeled at that point a violent predator. They won't put you in the room with another person that doesn't have that same type of offense. So I mean, our dorm was mostly life sentences. Almost everybody in there had life or an insane amount of time. When I was there was a couple of guys that had gotten off of death row. People that just, they're never going home. So when I was in our dorm, I was in cell 2 bottom, the same. I was in the same cell the whole time I was at Appalachia. So this is the same room I was in with Bimba, same exact room. Just Bimba wasn't my bunkie at the time that this took place. I hadn't actually met him yet. Now, the cell to my right is 1 bottom. I'm in 2 bottom. One of my brothers was in this cell. And at the time, this is when I'm good with all my people. You know what I mean? There's no issues, nothing like that. Something had popped off in another dorm. One of my brothers stabbed the shit out of a GD. I never really got the full story of what happened. I just heard it popped off. My brother went to wetting him up inside of the dorm. And, once that word gets out, everybody starts strapping up. All the Bloods are strapping up. All the GDs are strapping up. Everybody's getting ready to go to war. You know what I mean? So, the Bloods that are in my dorm, we all get together and we get put up on beat about what happened. And come to find out, the only GD in our dorm, not in our dorm, there's a ton of GDs in our dorm, but the only one in my quad, in quad 4, R4, the exact quad that I'm in. You know what I mean? You got like 80 people in each quad. The one that I'm in, there's only one GD, and he's in the cell next to me. He's in cell 1 with my brother. So they're actually in the room together, and we know that this isn't going to slide. They're not going to be able to lock down together. If they lock down, they're most likely going to tear it down in the cell. And not that my brother couldn't handle himself, but we would rather make sure he's all right. Instead of him having to go knife for knife, we would rather just wet dude up, take him out of the, take him off the compound, get him out of our dorm. So, push come to shove, he peeps game on what's happening quick. He knows. He sees us talking. We can see him looking out of the corner of his eye. And he's up on the glass, sign language in his brothers. You know what I mean? Anytime you see someone doing this, this is supposed to resemble a gun. So this means shoot it. When you tell someone shoot it, it could be, shoot me the pictures, shoot me some food, shoot me anything. You know what I mean? We're assuming he's saying shoot me a knife. He doesn't have one. So now we know he doesn't even have a strap, because he's on the window doing this. At least that's what we think. So we're like, this is going to be easy. The second we go to chow, when we go to chow, we have to leave the quad and go into like a holding hallway. So this hallway, it has bars on one side that need to be fully shut and locked before the front door opens up and we're allowed to go outside. And there's no CO when they put us in here. So when they put us in this hallway, we're, shoulder to shoulder with inmates. There's no room. They stuff us in one quad at a time. So you got like, 70, 80 people trying to fit into this little thing. And then they open the door and we all come out. There's a CO in the booth watching from inside. There's another CO outside, but there's no camera in this hallway. There's only a camera when you step outside. So we're thinking, once they lock the bar door, we're just going to start hitting them up. You know what I'm saying? This is how we're going to get them. There's no camera right here. He's going to get hit from, 5 different angles. They're not going to be able to pin who did it exactly. And there's so many people, blood's going to get everywhere. So mad people are going to go under investigation. There's a better chance we're going to get away with this. You know what I'm saying? We see Buddy. There was an orderly outside, outside of the lockdown doors. And he's able to go from each quad to each quad. So he gets the door popped. He waves up to the CO and gets our door popped. And gives dude a bunch of books. So I'm looking like, what the hell is he going to do with all those books? Like, thick books and magazines. He goes back to his room, puts the books in his room, comes back to the door. Buddy comes back, and I guess one of his brothers in another dorm stuffed a prison jacket under the door. So he pulls the jacket out of the door and stuffs it in ours. So now he's got a jacket. Now we know what he's doing. It wasn't, you really didn't need a jacket at this time. But the reason he's doing it is because he's going to take those books and he's going to tie them into the jacket and almost make a body armored suit out of this jacket. So he's going to stuff the books along his chest, ribs, and back because he knows he's the only one in here. So he, now we're thinking, okay, he might have a knife. He's preparing to go at it with us because he's making this little armored suit now. You know what I'm saying? So we're like, hey, you know what? It is what it is. All that means is we're just not going to hit you in the body. If we know you're putting these books all on your body, we're not going to hit you in the body. One of us is going to put one right in your thigh so you can't run, you can't move, and then you're going to get hit up in your neck and in your face. It is what it is. We're not necessarily trying to kill him, but we want to hurt you. And whatever happens, happens. It is what it is. This is war at this time, So we're ready for whatever follows. And I mean, we always had big shit, big ass knives, So we strap up. We get everything ready to go. Chow's about to get called. We're about to go to dinner. We're finna just hit him up. I got that feeling in my stomach, that adrenaline. It's a different feeling though. Like, when you have that feeling and you're doing something by yourself, it's a different feeling than when you're doing something with a bunch of people. And most of the times when I did something, I did it by myself. I didn't have anyone that was with me. I didn't have anyone that was gonna, you know what I'm saying? We weren't really like tagging anybody together. It was usually just me popping it off. But when you got a bunch of people with you, you kind of get pumped up off of each other's energy. Like, yeah, boy, we finna do this. We finna. So, we gassing each other up. We ready to go. When we get ready to go to the door, one of our brothers in another quad, he sign languages us. And he basically tells us, like, no, go. Don't do nothing. If he doesn't pop it off, don't do nothing. So we're kind of confused about the situation. You know what I'm saying? Because we just mentally prepared ourselves. All of us are strapped, and every time you go to chow, there's a risk because you get searched when you come out of chow, because they're searching people that are taking, bananas, chickens, peanut butter sandwiches. They don't want you to leave the chow hall with any food, so people are getting searched, and we might get knocked off with a knife in the process. And if they catch someone with a knife, they're gonna start flipping everybody because they want to see if people are strapped up for a reason or if Buddy's just carrying a knife. That's 60 days in confinement right there. So we're not trying to get caught strapped up for no reason. If we get caught, we're trying to make it happen. And he just tells us it's a no-go for right now. So we go to chow. When we go to chow, we somewhat stayed back. So, we ate our food. When we got up to leave, we sat down at another table So now the other dorm comes in behind us. So we were able to speak to our people in the other dorm. They basically told us that the specific GD that got into it with our brother violated their code of conduct some way, somehow. And basically what the word was is his face isn't good with them. I don't know if that means they were going to hit him up. They were going to handle him because we already wet him up. So he's already, in confinement, under investigation, went through medical with stab wounds. Like, he's not going to come back out. He's most likely going to get transferred off to another camp. They basically told us they didn't want to go to war. You know what I'm saying? They weren't going to go to war behind him. And everything just got called off at that point. In a sense, it saved us from having to do something crazy. In another sense, it saved him. I didn't really trust him at that point because I knew he most likely had a knife. I knew he built a suit. And he knows that, one of my brothers is in the cell with you, top bunk. And then on top of that, I'm in the cell next door. So there's a good chance you get flipped. You know what I'm saying? And there was like probably 5 of us in I-4 alone. In our dorm, we were like maybe 15 deep. But I mean, it was just like, you could tell like we avoided each other in the dorm. And then everything kind of died out. You know what I mean? We started getting more K2 in the dorm. Everybody's smoking K2. So people that don't normally talk are talking now. Either trying to get a light or, buy something off of someone else. Whatever. Then I find out who he is. This man's name is Lionel Tate. Lionel Tate is the youngest person in this country to be sentenced to life without parole. Period. Not just in the state of Florida. In the whole country. The youngest person to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I believe he was 12 years old. So what happened with this dude's case is his mother, and a crazy fact about this is his mom was a cop. His mom was a highway patrol trooper. Like, this case is insane. His mom was a cop. His mom was home, supposed to be babysitting, him and a friend's kid. So he was only 12 years old at the time and weighed 166 pounds. A big ass kid. The little girl was only 6 years old and she only weighed 40 something pounds, like 46, 48 pounds. I'll have the articles which will have the exact facts. But the story I was told from somebody from Broward County, I never spoke about the case with him, but I had someone from his area tell me about it, who was actually in county jail at the time that he was, way back in the day. Because he got charged with this in 1999. And I think he got convicted in 01 or 02. It's crazy, right? Because he was born 1988. So this is a wild case. This dude's been in prison pretty much his whole life. And what happened, what he said had happened, to everybody, was that he was wrestling the little girl, playing with her. And he was practicing wrestling moves that he had seen, and he slammed her. When he slammed her, she hit a coffee table, and I guess she went unconscious, and he went and got his mother. The little girl went to the hospital and passed away. The 6-year-old girl passed away. You know what I mean? And at first, like, everyone thought it was an accident. The friend's mom thought it was an accident. But then they started opening up the case. They did the autopsy on the little girl. So I'm going to pull up these facts for y'all, and we can go through this together. Left alone on July 28th with the 166-pound boy who has been described as an avid wrestling fan, the 48-pound girl apparently was battered about like a rag doll used to practice wrestling moves. Tiffany suffered over 30 internal and external contusions, abrasions, fractures, and scratches. One body blow to the girl's frame was so severe it detached part of her liver, according to the report. Now, I mean, that right there sounds insane, right? It doesn't sound like it was just one wrestling move, but it doesn't stop there. The details of Tiffany's injuries were made public for the first time at Friday's hearing to determine whether the boy should be kept at the Broward County Jail like any adult charged with a capital crime. After an hour-long hearing, LeBeau allowed him to go home. LeBeau was the judge at the time. The judge said she did not want to hold Tate at the Broward County Jail. I don't find the alternative of placing him in jail or isolation to be an acceptable one. I don't want him to be out of school. Tate will wear an electronic monitoring device and be entrusted to the supervision of his mother, Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Kathleen Tate. He will be allowed to go to school, but he may not have contact with younger children, and he must undergo a psychiatric evaluation. So think about that for a second. This kid, this 12-year-old kid, just killed a 6-year-old girl, right? She's dead. You know what I'm saying? This specific court hearing was to go over the details of the case to find out whether he should be kept in jail. And they decided to send him to school. No, keep him in school. He needs to still go to school. Just give him a bracelet. Obviously, it's because of his age. You know, he's 12 years old. He didn't shoot up a school like some crazy white kid, but he slammed a girl, and it somewhat seems like an accident, even though she's got some bad injuries, right? The autopsy report, introduced by the prosecution to show the boy could be a danger to others, gave a glimpse of the graphic evidence that influenced the Broward grand jury on Wednesday to indict such a young boy for murder. In the courtroom on Friday, Padowitz, or however you say this man's name, this is the state. This is the prosecutor speaking at this point. In the courtroom on Friday, Padowitz read a litany of Tiffany's injuries. Horrified, some of her relatives cried out, "Oh my God." Others quietly cried. In addition to the partially severed liver, her brain had been flattened and was swollen, the report says. Her cheeks, nose, neck, and chest were battered. Her right eye was hemorrhaging. In light of the brutality of the crime, LeBeau's decision to let the boy go home angered Tiffany's parents. At first, they had accepted the story their daughter was killed accidentally, squeezed in a bear hug by Tate, then dropped on a coffee table. Prosecutor Padowitz said initial reports that the boy and girl were longtime playmates were not true. The two had met just 2 weeks before. Until recently, Tate had been living with his father in Mississippi. He apparently was sent back to South Florida because he was too hard to handle, Padowitz said. On Friday, Padowitz also suggested a possible eerie motive for the girl's murder. He said the day after Tiffany's death, her accused killer asked the girl's grieving mother if he could have all the little girl's toys. Now it's getting crazy, right? This seems insane. I mean, when you hear the injuries that this girl had, this isn't just you got slammed one time. You know what I'm saying? This is you were punished. But the thing is, where is the mother? Because the mother was babysitting throughout the whole process. You know what I mean? Yeah, the kid is at fault. But where is the parent that is in charge of the child and supposed to be watching the other child? Why does it seem that the 12-year-old is watching the 6-year-old? At least that's how I view it so far. The mother cried as she described her efforts to resuscitate Tiffany after she said Tate woke her up to tell her Tiffany, who she was babysitting for her friend Deweese Unick, wasn't breathing. Tate was on U.S. Army Reserve duty the night before Tiffany died, and she was scheduled to go back on duty later that night. She said she went up to nap after fixing dinner for the children. Tiffany had complained earlier of a stomach ache, a sore neck, and said she had hurt her face when the children threw a video cassette in the air and it landed on her. But Tiffany had no marks on her and appeared to be feeling okay, Tate said. Mind you, every time it says Grosset Tate, that's his mother. While she was sleeping, Tate heard a noise like the children were running on the stairs, and she yelled down at them to stop making noise, she said. Tate said she heard a moaning noise like someone was having a nightmare or was in pain. Tate told his mother Tiffany was rolling around, and the mother assumed the girl was sleeping and having a nightmare. She called down for Tiffany to stop making noise or she would beat her butt, and went back to bed, she said. Bradley Henry, Tiffany's mother's boyfriend, called a short time later, and then Tate ran upstairs and told her Tiffany wasn't breathing, she said. She ran downstairs, checked for a pulse, and began trying to resuscitate the little girl, who she said was cold to the touch. She also called 911. Vomit was coming out of the girl's mouth, she said. The paramedics arrived and took Tiffany to the hospital, where she was later declared dead. The mother says she had no idea that Tate had anything to do with Tiffany's death, and the mother feared the girl's death was caused by the food the mother made for her. When she told Tate that Tiffany was dead, she said it was just like he shut down. He looked at me like he was shocked. She had no suspicion that her son was involved until he told her and Broward Sheriff's detectives who questioned Tate days after Tiffany's death, the mother testified. She says she never asked him what happened to Tiffany before the session when she joined detectives in questioning her son. I mean, the case is just sounding crazy. Like, the mother was upstairs sleeping, missed out on all of this happening, didn't hear anything happening. And then she's saying that, you know, Lionel Tate wasn't suspicious, didn't seem like anything was wrong, and then he was just completely shocked to find out she had died. The prosecutor, Podowitz, pointed out what he said were inconsistencies between the mother's testimony earlier and later in the case. He implied she cleaned up the death scene, tried to hide a blood-stained pillow, and lied about the alleged injury to Tiffany's face earlier in the day. The mother also incorrectly told Tiffany's mother, the little girl's mother now. Lionel Tate's mother told the little girl who died, her mom, that 30 kids who went to Bible camp with Tiffany a few days before the incident got sick. So remember how she said that she was assuming it could have been the food that killed her? Because when she found her, she was throwing up. Now she's telling the other girl's mom, oh, other kids just got sick at a camp. As if she's really trying to spin this whole, it's the food. So what's crazy about this case, right? Aside from all the facts that we just read, aside from, you know, obviously this little girl was beaten to death. Obviously the mother isn't trying to take any accountability, even though she was the one responsible for watching both of the kids at the time. And then the prosecutor is even going as far as saying that the mother was lying to defend the son. You know, I mean, I would assume most moms would do anything to get their kid out of trouble, but the fact that his mother is a cop and is doing all this, it's crazy because you think that it would never even have reached this stage. Push come to shove, he ends up getting sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in the state of Florida. The youngest kid to catch a life sentence. When the judge read the sentence, Tate, now 14, sat blankly at the defense table, seemingly unable to comprehend his fate. When a woman began wailing in the courtroom, a tear rolled down his cheek. So it doesn't end right here, right? So he killed the girl when he was like 12. He got sentenced when he was 13, and then he just turned 14. I think right after the conviction had happened, like a week after. But it doesn't end though. He actually gets the case overturned and somewhat gets his time back. Tate got a second chance at freedom in 2004 when an appellate court overturned his conviction, and he got 10 years probation with a plea deal for second-degree murder. He was back in jail 9 months later for violating his probation after getting caught outside after curfew. Tate spent 52 days in jail before the judge released him again in November 2004, giving him an extra 5 years of probation. So right now we're at 15 years of probation. But this kid already got out messed up. And I mean, it's only a curfew violation, but you're on probation for murder. 7 months later, authorities arrested Tate in the May 2005 robbery, and he's been behind bars since. This man, right? This kid, because he was a kid when all this happened. He was a kid. You caught a life sentence without the chance of going home at 13, right? You get it overturned in like the next 2 years. You get out on 10 years probation. You fuck that up. You get 5 years probation added, so now you have 15 years of probation. And then this kid gets caught doing an armed robbery, sticking up a pizza man for 4 pizzas. Anything armed in the state of Florida is a punishable by life offense. He's already on murder probation, right? Tate rejected a deal that ensured he would face no additional prison time on an armed robbery charge. He rejected it. Tate insisted he wanted to fight charges. He held up a Domino's delivery man at gunpoint for 4 pizzas. He could end up with a life prison term tacked to his 30-year sentence if he's convicted. Most do not even get a second chance, let alone a third chance, the judge said. The choices were there for you, and you chose wrong. His attorney argued that Tate's failure to stay out of prison could be attributed to his mother's neglect. His mother, a Florida Highway Patrol trooper, left guns in the home that were readily accessible. What I say to Miss Tate is that today is the day you go home and you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, how did I fail my son? Some people are telling him he's going to win his appeal on violating his probation, and he's going to win his robbery case, and he's going to be out in a year as a free man. Williams observed that Tate's mother had been the one in 2001 who rejected a plea deal in the murder case that would have sent her son to a juvenile detention facility for 3 years. So think about that. His mother is the one in his ear telling him not to take pleas, not to do this, not to do that. He could have pleaded out on the robbery and just been on probation, or just gotten a sentence at least for the robbery. But backtracking, he could have done 3 years in juvie for the murder. He would have had a murder conviction on his record, but that would have been it. He would have just had that. You know what I mean? They end up resentencing him, right? They give him 30 years for violating the probation. They give him 10 years for the additional robbery to run concurrent on a 30-year sentence. This kid has spent his whole life in prison. He's in his 30s now. The guy that I met that told me about him, he told me that, you know, when Tate was in court as he was a kid, he used to always be laughing and smiling and bragging about his case. Not killing the girl, but the fact that he was like a celebrity. All the CO staff in the jail were extra nice to him because of how well known he was. None of the guards wanted to risk abusing him or doing anything like that because everyone knew his name at that point. It was a huge, huge profile case. You know what I mean? And he used to brag. The female COs used to treat him special, especially because he was such a young kid. When I met him, it was at Appalachia. I was ready to stab the shit out of him. I didn't know any of his background, any of who he was, but it's a crazy case. And rest in peace to the little girl that lost her life. You know, when I honestly started to get to know him, he didn't come off as a bad dude. Everyone knew he couldn't fight. You know, I heard he would stab somebody just mainly because he couldn't fight. But he really wasn't a violent person. He didn't carry himself violently. He didn't start anything. He was actually more of a funny guy. He's always making jokes. And I mean, he really just hung out. it was just, he never gave me a bad vibe. I never could have imagined that he would be the one behind charges like this. But, you know, in prison, you can't judge anybody because it'll be the one that you think is soft that's killed the most people in the whole dorm. So, I mean, it's another crazy story, right? It's another life lost. It's another life lost to prison. It's wild, but hey, I hope y'all enjoyed the story. 1090 Jake. I'm rocking with y'all like y'all rocking with me. Till next time.